lowering speed limits to 30 kilometers per hour or lower, following the examples of cities like Madrid and Bilbao in Spain and Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And we also want to make sure that the speed limits within 1 kilometer of a school, when schools can open again at least, will be limited to speeds that are safe for walking. So 20 kilometers per hour and 15 kilometers per hour during school hours. And uh, touching on that, recently Pasig City became a partner city of the NACTO Designing Streets for Kids guidebook. So we are one of the cities that volunteered to be an ongoing case study for the production of this for the future implementation of the principles in this guidebook to make sure our streets are safe, not just for cyclists and e-vehicle users, but even for kids who are out in the street walking and playing with their families. We really believe that just like many other things in the COVID-19 pandemic, it's not a choice between health or the economy. We've got to focus on improving both public health and the economy at the same time. And that's it for me. Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to a great and fruitful discussion this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Anton. Thank you, Anton. Good. Great examples on how things are, the rubber is hitting the road, ika nga, no, in Pasig City. Well done. Again, we have about 472 people in our Zoom webinar today. Thank you again. The numbers keep on rising. Thank you very much for spending your afternoon, or in some places around the world, your morning with us in our webinar about urban mobility. We'd like to go on to our next speaker. For our next presentation, it is my pleasure to introduce Paulo Alcazaren. Paulo is an environmental planner and landscape architect. He has been involved in planning, urban design, landscape architecture projects in over a dozen countries in Asia for the last 38 years. And with 12 of those based in Singapore as managing director of PDAA Design, PTE Limited. He's currently head of PGAA Creative Design Manila. Paulo is the recipient of several awards for urban design and landscape architecture from the Philippines and Southeast Asia. In 2016, he won the Cultural Center of the Philippines Gawad para sa Sining Award for Architecture and Allied Arts. He is also a writer and journalist with several books and publications to his credit. He pens a regular column with the Philippine Star on architecture, heritage, urbanism, and design. His advocacies are in heritage conservation, green cities, and bringing back open space and sidewalks to our cities. To discuss urban design and better mobility and open space, let us welcome Paulo Alcazaren. Paulo, welcome.
Thank you, Sui. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paulo Alcazaren, principal of PGAA Creative Design. We're a multidisciplinary firm engaged in planning, urban design, and landscape architecture. But before we go to the presentation, let me first thank the organizers, Liveable Cities Lab and the League of Cities of the Philippines, and all of you on Zoom this afternoon for this opportunity to make my presentation. Let me share my screen. So this afternoon, we will be walking the talk, looking at the importance of good urban design for mobility. In the new normal, we can no longer rely only on individual cars or vehicles, which produce the purgatorial traffic we are all so familiar with. We must remember that we start and end all of our commutes by walking the first and last mile, yet we invest very little in infrastructure for pedestrians and bicycles. And this infrastructure is very much less expensive than the infrastructure we now spend for vehicles. But how can we walk when our sidewalks are used for everything else but for walking? They're used for parking for tricycles. I long for a city that gives more rights to pedestrians than to SUVs. Even trucks use the sidewalk for parking, and this can be seen in several areas, urban areas. There are no safe places to walk, so our kids have to find other modes of transportation. And our sidewalks are within the commerce of man, and it's used for workshops, for stores, for food. And here's a sample of formal food with McDonald's, but we also have informal food with McDonald's. And we can't report this to the police because the police themselves are also on the sidewalk. And neither can we report this to the barangay because the barangays themselves are on the sidewalks also. And this is really a problem. We have very bad design for pedestrians, for people, better for cars. You have to be trained as a mountain climber to be able to cross a lot of our avenues and boulevards. And pity the seniors and like myself and the PWD who will risk injury just climbing those stairs. I call our sidewalks Poland because they're just full of poles, and more poles. I mean, no space for pedestrians. Jesus Christ. In fact, Jesus Christ is also on the sidewalk. I call this the block Nazarene because he's on every block. If you're an atheist, you have the Avengers, and we have marvelous sidewalks. If you notice in the picture, it's actually a car wash. So again, it's not for people, but for cars. So we have disabling street corners and even water sports for PWDs. And our corners, our cantos, are actually barrier friendly. That means they're friendly to the barriers and not to the PWDs that need to use them. So here's an example, stainless steel sidewalks of a reverse. You have railings for the PWDs, but other people can't use the sidewalks because they're blocked. And really, some of our sidewalks really just lead to nowhere. And this is a real place. I did not tell these people to post. It really is a problem that we don't have good urban design and streetscape design for our cities. But after years of giving talks with images like this, we've been able to convince a number of LGUs and district authorities for pedestrian and non-motorized transport projects. I'll show you examples what has been done and what can be done in 5 cities, although we're actually involved in about a dozen more. This includes Makati, BGC, Ortigas, Baywalk, and Iloilo Esplanade. We start with Makati. We've been the consultants to Masaya, the Building Owners Association, for the last 20 years in collaboration with the city of Makati. Studies were made in the late 90s that found that people took as much as 30 to 40 minutes to cross from one side of the CBD to the other because they took cars and it was not conducive for walking. We assessed all of the streets and sidewalks in terms of walkability. We found Ayala to contain 12 types of different paving. A lot of them were broken and the trees were stunted because of the weight of the pedestrians. We redesigned the sidewalks of Ayala with granite paving. This allowed us to fix the utilities underneath. We changed the trees, which are already dead or dying, to native species, Sedita, and put them at the side so that it wouldn't compromise the carrying capacity of the sidewalks. And we actually built them. So we built Ayala, Paseo, and Makati avenues at the cost of about 300 million for both sides of the 2 kilometers plus another 1 kilometer for Paseo and Makati avenues. And this was taken a few years ago, and the trees are now large and giving shade. So traffic despite the traffic, you can now cross to the other side in 5 to 10 minutes. Some of the areas we had to elevate the walkways because the sidewalks in Legazpi and Salcedo villages, which were originally intended for residential development, was turned to commercial. And so we didn't have the capacity. We had to raise them. We had to ensure that the traffic volume for pedestrians would be accommodated. But there, we found another opportunity to improve walkability in Makati when we found a lot of the street corners which were designed for high-speed traffic because also of the wide lanes. There are certain corners, a lot of the corners like this, you had to cross great distances to get to the other side, 60 meters. So what we suggested is to use bulb outs and to project the corners so that pedestrians would have much closer distances to cross, and this without compromising the throughput or the carriageway of the cars. So we did this, we called them urban patios. And we started with 3. They were very, very popular. We're doing another 6 more and have plans for another dozen or so all throughout the district. And there's a speed table, so it also calms the traffic. And we provided green spaces as well as seating areas. And we won an award. This won an award last year from the Design Center Philippines for the Gold Award for Best Placemaking. Over in BGC next door, we have the BGC Greenway, which is a work in progress. And this is a 2-part thing. The first part being a DOTR project, which connects Buendia to the start of BGC, which is here. And the BGC Greenway is the project we're doing with BGCEA, which is the Association of Building Owners there. And that involves a 1.4 kilometer greenway using a disused utility corridor between the condominiums and the golf course. So this is in progress. This is the entrance, and now we redevelop it so that it's more comfortable and better landscape. And there are 3 nodes in between where we've managed to create larger spaces and public space, which now is very useful in COVID times for recreation and relief. So that's under construction. In Ortigas CBD, we're involved with the Pasig City, and Anton showed you some of the initiatives on the bike side. But we were part of a team that assessed the CBD in terms of traffic, vehicular traffic and pedestrian circulation, and we found a lot of problems that needed to be addressed. The main problem is this. Once you get to EDSA from the MRT, there's almost no sidewalk. In fact, you have to walk sideways to get to the sidewalk, and this is really untenable. And so the solution we had to suggest and we designed for is an elevated walkway connecting Robinsons on one end and SM on the other, and leading straight inside to the CBD, because we found in our study that it takes 30 to 40 minutes for people upon arrival with the MRT to get to their offices. So now with the improved pedestrian network, which is this elevated, you don't have to come down to the almost non-existent sidewalk, and you can walk down to a grade level at ADB Avenue. Under the ramp access, we put a bike hub. So this is where you can take a shower and change and go to your office and park your bike. And you can do the reverse before going home. And this removes one of the problems in bike riding in a tropical country. So this is funded by DOTR and ADB, but part of that is also connection to spaces, and we have designed some of the spaces already. This is a small pocket park in the middle of the CBD, and there are 2 more that we're designing, and hopefully we can implement that in the next year or so. And we also have a system of at-grade and elevated walkways, and this is for carrying capacity because the original sidewalks were quite restricted. In Guadalupe, this is an unsolicited proposal from us to connect intermodal from MRT to Guadalupe station to JP Rizal, because there's a big park that cannot be accessed, and there's very narrow sidewalks to connect from the MRT to the jeeps that fly JP Rizal. And so the solution is an elevated connection that gives people access to the park and then to the jeepneys. Hopefully this will be picked up by Makati. So in going back to Ortigas, we found that there was no public open space. We suggested building a plaza above the intersection of Emerald and Julio Vargas. We designed it and it was actually built, and our office is right next door. And this is very popular and much used now. So we also found that on Emerald Avenue, we could expand and improve the sidewalk by removing the center island of Emerald Avenue. And we did so. And we planted palms because we couldn't plant shade trees because of the fiber optics underneath. In any case, most of Emerald Avenue is under shade because of its orientation, and it has increased and improved pedestrian traffic. And of course, you've seen some of the initiatives that we worked on with Pasig City for bike ridership, and that's already part and embedded in the CBD. So we go to Rojas Boulevard. In the previous administration, we were asked to fix or do a renovation of Rojas Boulevard because it was damaged during a storm surge. And then we designed it at a cost of 250 million for 2 kilometers. We're not involved in the Manila Bay Sands, but we were involved in the fixing up of the Baywalk on both sides, rationalization of the parking on the other side, and we were able to do so. And we were able also to build the segregated bike and pedestrian path on the new Baywalk. The serrated edge of the planters you see here are not a design affectation. They are engineering also because they help absorb the energy of storm surges. And this is before and this is after. So it connects at the other end to the CCP, to ASEAN Plaza, which we also designed. And this is a transition open space that leads to the Esplanade, which is also existing and very popular with locals and tourists. Now, I have to mention in Rizal Avenue, there was a pedestrianization project which was very successful. They closed a section of Avenida Rizal, and doing so with the burying of the utility cables, the building owners took it upon themselves to fix up their facades. The real estate values rose, lease rental rose, and it was good for a while, except that when the mayor lost the next elections, it reverted back to its original vehicular orientation. Sayang. This is our most popular and admittedly most successful project in the public realm, the Iloilo Civic Spaces and River Esplanade Development. We were brought to Iloilo 8 years ago by the Senator Drilon and showed this dark road. Traffic was very light because it was not really necessary. So he asked us to do and design an esplanade for people. We designed it in 3 months with 3 stakeholder meetings. We took their comments, revised, and we actually built it in 8 months at the cost of just over 60 million for the initial 1.2 stretch of the esplanade. So it's been very successful. We're now in phase 9. One of the biggest stories here is the cost of property along the river before we started was 4,000 to 5,000 pesos per square meter. Now it's 20,000 to 30,000 pesos and above because of the investment in the public realm that has proven that profit will accrue not just to the users of the space in terms of amenity, but also to property owners. This is phase 3 and 4. And this has won 2 awards. And you can actually take a boat and have a nice ride down the river to both sides. And this is the diagram showing that in this diagram, which is slightly old, we were at phase 9, but now we're phase 8, but now we're at phase 9 with a total of 5 kilometers completed, giving Iloilo City a linear park with a total area as large as Rizal Park in Manila, but serving just over 1 million people instead of serving 12 million. So it has also brought in a lot of other projects, including the provincial capital complex, where we've been able to recover 3 large open spaces and connect them with the esplanade at the rear. So this is already complete and open. It's now very popular, of course, as a public park. And we've also recovered Sunburst Plaza right beside the City Hall in the same vein, providing open spaces connected again to the esplanade. But the story does not stop there. We were asked to also look at improving pedestrian and bike connectivity for Aquino Avenue, which leads to the airport. We were able to convince the DPWH to give more than 40% of the road right away for pedestrians and bikers. And the senator and the other officials twisted the arm of DPWH. We designed it and we built it. So this was a few years ago when it was completed, the initial first phase of 2 kilometers from the Drillon Bridge to SM. And this is on opening day, but this is how it looks on bike day. In fact, bike ridership in Iloilo has increased several hundred-fold even before COVID, but now they use it all the time because Iloilo is the bike capital of the Philippines. This is a bike network. And just recently, an artist, group of artists helped paint 50 bike racks. They're now distributed all over the city. And this is the reality, and it can be done. A city can be retrofitted for pedestrians and bikers, and this connectivity will improve the quality of life of Iloilo as it can for all of your towns and cities. So let's take the first step and walk the talk. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paulo, for that excellent and very entertaining presentation again. Especially like how sidewalks are meant to be walked through sideways. But anyway, so thank you for that. Our next presentation today will be by Randy Del Valle. So Randy is the Vice President and General Manager for Retail Business in Philippine Shell Petroleum Corporation. He is also the Executive Director of the PSPC Board. Randy brings with him more than 20 years of experience across various businesses in the energy sector. Prior to his current post, he was in Group Strategy Consultancy based in London and The Hague, where he led various high-impact projects in several divisions of the Shell Group. He has also held local, regional, global roles in Shell's retail marketing business, as well as in sales and operation based in the UK and in the Philippines. To present on mobility in the Philippines, not one, but many solutions, let us welcome Randy. On to you, Randy.
Thank you very much, Sui. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Good. Please go on.
Great. So thanks very much, Sui, and many thanks, Katarina, Paolo, and Anton. I really learned a lot from your presentation. Such a pride to be a Filipino these days, helping shape the mobility. So I think for the past few minutes, you've heard about Katarina talking about mobility for the masses, for public transport, and some of the samples that you have from the different countries. And Anton sharing Pasig City as a sample for cities that's really out there promoting cycling to work and even introducing EV. How a city strives to be part of the transition. So such a city solutions within Pasig. And then Paolo, a very fun presentation about how cities will be designed for mobility. We probably learn from our mistakes, and then I hope that all these learnings will help to shape the mobility future for the Philippines. So right now, I'm here. I'm so privileged to be here. I wanted to say hello to all the viewers, to all the local chief executives. It's really an honor to speak to all of you today to talk about mobility in the Philippines. And talking about the different solutions that we can actually apply here in the Philippines or here in Asia. So I wanted to start asking probably a question. So this is not a Zoom survey, but is Philippines in the middle of a mobility revolution? And I think from the talks that we have a few minutes ago, we are actually indeed in the middle of a mobility revolution. So for me, as what Sui said, I just moved back here in the Philippines this year from Singapore. And from what I've actually seen, there's a rapid evolution in transport here in the Philippines and across Asia. So Philippines comprising 7,000 islands, mobility in the Philippines is not just about road networks, but also encompasses several factors such as marine, air, rail, and other infrastructures. So a rapidly growing population with geographical diversity, with need for multimodal approach to mobility. So just checking as well. So I hope you can see the screen too. So let's talk about urbanization. So what has been driving this across Asia? So increasing urban population is a healthy rise in gross domestic product and widespread digital disruption have created the conditions for major mobility growth. The Philippines has sustained an average economic growth rate of 5% per year since 2000. Even the country's younger population with under 30 comprising 60% of the population being the contributing factor to increasing urbanization and connectivity. Food and transport spend posted a CAGR of almost 10% in the last 5 years. And add to that, the fact that the habits of the customers are changing rapidly. And this is like thanks to the technologies, the demand for convenience, the increased awareness, and the impact of various digital offers to meet the customer's needs. This might include some desire to a cleaner energy future. So the future of transport is exciting. It is about more than simply moving people or products. It is about safer, more diverse, and better quality choices. It's about enabling access, efficiency improvement, and increased convenience. And in a COVID-19 world, it is about understanding the risk and becoming more agile to meet the customer needs. Of course, there are major challenges. We have limited infrastructure, rural remoteness, a cultural or generational reluctance to change. But ultimately, solving transport challenges across the Philippines and in Asia, whether extensive road congestion, insufficient public transport, or even air pollution issues, this requires a variety of initiatives and actions from the country. In other words, we need many solutions, not just one. But there are some themes that are relevant in Asia and here in the Philippines. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about 3 of them. So I'm going to talk about customers, I'm going to talk about sustainable digital offers, and the impact of COVID-19 on mobility. Let's start off first with the customers. Around the world, customers are increasingly demanding for more convenience, enhanced digital solutions, alongside more sustainable mobility options. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, just very early this year, we actually invited a group of graduates in Singapore to sit down with us and discuss their views. And they gave these 3 main insights. The first one was they were ready to use technology to access efficient and affordable mobility services. They also said that they were not interested in owning a vehicle. So that was a big surprise for me. And that they cared about the impact of mobility in the environment. So that was a question that we had in Singapore, but we also asked the question here in the Philippines. So in the further review in the Philippines, the customer insight says that the people that actually go for brand and offers that give them good customer experience and have a good brand, the brand that actually has a good brand values, something that they can trust. So consumers are now more responsible in their choices of a sustainable future. So at Shell, we put customers at the heart of the services. So this is really about customers at the start of all the options and choices that we give. This is to ensure that we keep in a step with society. What does the customer want? What do they need? So ultimately, we will only be successful if we build products, services, and solutions that fulfill the needs of our customers or even within our community. And as we have listened to our customers, Shell has evolved, and we will continue to adapt and be agile. That approach has enabled Shell to be a vibrant global business and stay relevant to the customers for over 106 years here in the Philippines. So in line with the growing demand for convenience, we are developing the range of services at the Shell forecourts to provide daily necessities, to better serve people like here, like a customer like Kathy, who shuffles between supplier meetings and delivering orders from clients. So from a customer persona, Kathy also finds herself exhausted as she sometimes stops at a Shell station to take a break and grab some treats at Shell Select. So we now have coffee, we have now food offers. And just recently, she found out that she can actually buy basic groceries in a Shell station get food from our partner co-locators, and pay bills while waiting for her oil change facility in a Shell Helix oil change facility within the Shell outlets. So this is really truly about a customer-centric approach. How do we design the mobility with the customer and community in mind? The second topic is really about sustainable and digital offers. New technologies are delivering new and simple ways for businesses and consumers to connect and interact. It creates new opportunities for both B2B and B2C markets. Mobile connectivity and internet penetration differ wide across the region, so especially here in Asia. But consumers are adopting to digital technology at an unprecedented rate, a trend that has accelerated during the COVID-19 pandemic. Across Asia, people are increasingly connected. When you talk about South Asia, mobile internet connectivity has doubled since 2014 to 33%. In East Asia, over 50% of the population are now connected via mobiles. And here in the Philippines, over 75% of the internet user purchase of products or services online. In Shell, we have these types of offers and solutions that are very important. So we have been introducing for the past few months, few years, a lot of offers with varying payment solutions like GCash or PayMaya, where currently in Shell, it is accepted in almost 400 Shell stations nationwide in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And we even plan to even increase it this year to accept mobile payments. Shift now to loyalty. So loyalty is also like different platforms. So Shell Go Plus is the new loyalty program of Shell that lifts everyday's journey with exclusive and exciting rewards and privileges on and off the road. It is a pure innovation of what Shell can give to the customers, allowing for earning and redemption across Shell products and services with personalized offers, value-adding benefits like free roadside assistance, and upcoming benefits with partner brands. It supports for safer transactions in our station with purely app-based loyalty program that allows for contactless loyalty transaction, coupled with our partnership with mobile wallets like PayMaya and GCash. You won't have to handle cash or pull out your wallet in our stations. Next is about convenience. Digital innovation is the heart of our mobility transformation. Being connected has created a huge demand for convenience at the touch of a button. Online transaction, cashless payment option, online on-demand delivery, and now found everywhere in many urban hubs in the Philippines, in many urban cities that we have here in the Philippines. And consumers are willing to pay for premium for such services because this is really what they need. So e-commerce is booming, cutting down the direct mobility needs of shoppers. According to a study, 50% of the consumer opt to purchase online, allowing them to order, pay for, and receive goods in the comfort of their own homes. Connectivity in B2B vehicles is also driving new trend. Fleet operators are increasingly adopted telematics, the combination of telecommunication and informatics such as navigation system and vehicle tracking, to connect fleets in real time, thereby improving the efficiency of the fleets in the B2B transport. This is one of the solutions that we give in our Shell Fleet Solutions, our Shell Fleet Card. Bikers is also a very huge segment. Shell-specific Bikers Fuel Island are designed to meet the different needs of motorcycles. There's lots of riders around, really providing them for customized services and enhance their protections and efficiency on the road. The bikers perform a very unique task that no other mobility services can do. Their roles are also evolving as they meet the new challenges that is emerging in their society. If you can just really recall, while the use of cars are actually went down due to COVID, there's lots of motorbikes actually serving us, serving the communities. That's why in Shell, and we're very proud of it, we have pioneered this biker fuel lanes across several sites in the Philippines, which I believe is the first in the industry. It's a true innovation, as we are always do in Shell, to provide them with dedicated service to support their own unique responsibilities. Reducing carbon is also very important. So in Shell, we have also committed to reducing carbon intensity of our sites. As what you can see in on the screen, so this is a site that we have in Quezon City, in Pook Ligaya. So we've continued to test solutions that will reduce the carbon emissions from our products and our operations. We have introduced a lot of elements. So when we talk about solar panels, We have almost 100 of our Shell stations around the country that are already using solar panels, reducing the electricity consumption of these sites. We also introduced an eco brick. This is actually like a recycling the lubricants, plastics, and component and building blocks to build the stores or to create the building. So in fact, in Plaridel, Bulacan, we will be introducing some of those good elements about the first building made out of recycled plastic. So such a very important bit in Plaridel, Bulacan. I think this is going to be one of the first in the world and one of the first in the Philippines. We have also partnered with brands to recycle plastic bottles. And we wanted to really be out there and really partner with a lot of like cities, a lot of partners to really make sure that we recycle well. LED for our forecourt and fashion lights indoors. We've also introduced inverters and chillers and aircon, really reducing the cost electricity for a cleaner energy solutions of our sites. So I'm quite excited about this because we have introduced this not just in Quezon City, but we've introduced this in Cebu City a couple years ago. If you visit our sites in Mango and in Banilad, and then we also introduced this in some of the cities and planning to do some cities in Taguig and Anton, hopefully in Pasig as well, to really drive our ambition for reduced carbon. So we've also introduced some rainwater catchment. So we actually have some plants in here, and we have a rainwater catchment to make sure that we actually feed water based on rain for our sites. And we've introduced like a green walls and more as you see this. So it's not just about enhancing the customer offer or adding that bit, but part of this is really our responsibility towards reducing the carbon in terms of our products, in terms of our operations. So this is really about meeting the mobility needs and meeting towards a sustainable future. So to all the cities out there, Shell is really would like to be a partner of this. This is really true to our purpose for our customers now and for our customers in the future, and also our community. And we will be willing to discuss with the cities to find some solutions that are out there. So biofuels is also very important. So Shell also continues to develop advanced biofuels from non-food plants. In the Philippines, so parts of the biofuels program, so in our gasoline, we have ethanol coming from sugarcane and also cocoa methyl ester from coconuts in our diesel. And as the country needs more better roads, we have developed a better bitumen. So the Shell Bitumen Fresh Air, so one of the industry first around the world, reduces the emissions of specific gases and particulates by up to 40% during asphalt production and road construction. So imagine this across the cities around the Philippines. We have successfully introduced this product here in the country. So great innovation to the various cities that are wanting to have this change, a change toward cleaner city solutions. So the last element that I'll be talking about is the impact of COVID-19. So the pandemic has a major impact on mobility trends around the world. The disruption to everyone, everywhere is really enormous. In the short term, the need for social distancing is having a major influence on behavior and preferences. COVID-19 is also influencing how and where all the people consume goods, with greater focus on cluster of shops and services or proximity hubs due to the reluctance of travel far from home. The pandemic has forced us in Shell to adapt to make sure that we continue to meet the needs of our customers, to our community in the best possible way. So some of the adoption actually includes, I've spoke about this, like contactless transaction in the country, cashless payment, home delivery. We are now delivering Shell Select products in more than 100 sites in the country. So all you need to call is just call or do online, and we're going to deliver the Shell Select products right to your homes safely. And we're working with delivery partners as we actually serve food, grocery, or even car services. Click and collect systems are also there to minimize the contact times, and we're doing this not just from Shell, but also with our partners. As effective treatments and vaccines more available and the risk of COVID-19 drops, the use of public transport is likely to grow again, but that will take time. For now, people have to adapt to the new normal. In the meantime, around the world, many governments are really incorporating green initiatives into large economic stimulus packages to assist their economies to overcome the impact of COVID-19 And this might actually include some options for electric vehicles and others. So as what Anton mentioned about EV for scooters, it might actually trigger some of these electric vehicles for cars and other road transport. So in conclusion, there are many more factors to take into account when discussing the future of mobility. And ultimately, solving the transport challenges requires different initiatives and actions from one country to another. And I do hope that we have that one here in the Philippines, whether widespread adoption of EVs, promotion of, I don't know, car sharing or reduced congestion, walking, biking, investment in mass transit system, high-speed rail, greater use of biofuels, or any other types of adoption. There are many courses and there are many solutions. But something is really important. Whatever those solutions may be, they require close collaboration between the government, the industry, and society. They require engagement from the energy supplier to the vehicle manufacturer, to the government, non-governmental organization, and ultimately to our customers. No single stakeholder can achieve a successful system alone. Whatever forms of the future transport takes, we can influence them by building and strengthening partnership. By exchanging ideas, we can find solutions together. This is how we can shape the future of mobility. And above all, in a COVID-19 world, we have to continue listening and learning. We have to be agile and adaptive. And more than ever, we have to put the customer and our community and our kababayans first. I truly believe that Philippines is a country that can pioneer and embrace this change. If we continue supporting one another, and if we work towards one vision for the good of our community and for the country, I really do believe that Pilipinas, kaya natin to. Maraming salamat. Sui?
Thank you, Randy. Thank you for that. A very extensive view of how things come together for the future of mobility for the Philippines. Thanks for that. And I would like to invite our panelists, everyone, back to our screen. So I'd like to ask Katerina from the LSE Cities, London School of Economics and Political Science, Paulo Arcazaren, our resident expert, environmental planner and landscape architect, and Anton C., the head of transport for Pasig City. I would also like to acknowledge some of the mayors who is still with us in this webinar. Mayor Nicolas Yulo of Bago City, Negros, Mayor Gilbert Gatchalian of San Pedro City, Laguna, Mayor Lourdes Katakis from Malolo City, Bulacan, Mayor Erickson Singson from Candon City, Ilocos Sur, Mayor Lani Mercado Revilla from Bacoor City, and Mayor Roberto Uy from the municipality of Liloy, Zamboanga del Norte. I believe they're still in the call as of around half past the hour. Perhaps if we could ask the mayors if they'd like to come off mute or raise their hand if you have some questions for our panelists. Also, I'd like to call Bill, Bill Luz, who is, let's get him into the panel. Maybe he'd like to mention a few things as well. So with the help of our people in the back office, maybe if we can get some of the mayors online if they'd like to raise their hand or ask a few questions. In the meantime, I'm gonna pull up some of the top asked questions. While we're waiting for the mayors to perhaps compose their questions, I'd like to share, we have about 20 or so minutes now for Q&A, and thank you everyone. Great presentations from our panelists and speakers. I'd like to raise this one question, the most popular one. It's been answered by Anton and Katarina, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning and sharing it to everybody who's not seen this in the Q&A. And then another question, number 2, I think if I can invite the panelists to answer this as well. So these 2 questions. First, is there any possibility of architecture and infrastructure for cyclists? Sort of what's been done in Copenhagen and the underground bicycle garage in Japan. I see some answers from Anton and Katerina, but perhaps you'd like to share how you responded to that. Katerina and Anton, share it with the rest of the people in our webinar. Well, ladies first, go ahead, Katerina.
All right.
Put you on the spot now.
Well, I think it's a good question that actually points to a sort of bigger issue, which is that every time we think about new transport policy, such as, for example, improving cycleways, we really have to think about the user and the way in which they move through the city. So I think the question really gets to an important point, which is it's great if you're suddenly providing cycling infrastructure in the form of dedicated cycle lanes, but if people have no place in their place of work or maybe in their apartment building to keep their bicycles, that's obviously a huge deterrent. And it's something that we're struggling with even in places like London that have recently made great strides in improving cycling capacity. It's a constant battle that I, as a cyclist in the city, I've been cycling for 10 years in London, and I'm still fighting organizations, including the university where I work, for better, drier, safer cycle parking. So we've all got a long way to go, I think.
Good. How about you, Anton?
Sure. I just want to add on to that. I think as someone who cycles around the city, especially in Manila, it really gets quite frustrating at times. And one reason that folding bikes are so popular here is when you have a folding bike, a lot of the times you don't have to worry about where to park your bike, which really it can be quite inconvenient depending on where you're going. I think one thing which we need to keep in mind is that when you think of making life better for cyclists, people sometimes think, oh, just because we can't do something like the huge parking garages in Copenhagen or in Japan, where they have it underground with elevators, fully automated. Some people think that just because you can't do that doesn't mean, it means that it's hopeless to improve things for cyclists. But actually, I think there's a lot that can be done rather quickly, and even using technology that's available in the Philippines. As I pointed out, it only takes a few parking spaces to create hundreds of spaces for bikes. One parking space can easily be converted into a bicycle rack with holding over 10 bikes. And I think for businesses, this makes a lot of sense as well. I mean, would you rather have one customer or 10? So I think if you're able to communicate that to people effectively, that you can improve things for cyclists using stuff that's actually quite accessible, then I think we can really change minds of people about what's possible.
Thank you. I see Paulo Alcazar nodding his head here. So with the success of taking off from this question, with the success of cycling in Iloilo, did that involve also creating the necessary support infrastructure for cyclists?
Well, it was a case of chicken or the egg. Once the infrastructure was built that allowed for segregated bike lanes, then people took it up. And Rock Drelon, who's head of one of the groups there, said that there are dozens of bike shops just sprung up, and even more in this COVID time. So everyone's, he says that most households in Iloilo have one or two bikes now in their driveways instead of cars. Nice. And it's really a way to get around. Of course, Iloilo is a much smaller city, and it's compared to Metro Manila. You have to understand that a lot of the urban solutions can be easily achieved or achieve success in these places. But it's not to say that you can't do it in the 16 cities and one town that produces duck eggs in the Philippines, in Metro Manila. That's Patero.
Right. Okay.
Sui?
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, hi, Sui, this is Bill. I see a question in the chat box from Mayor Lanny.
Okay. Let me see.
Mayor Lanny asks, we need dynamic planners. Who did the Iloilo province hire in order to implement these plans? I think I'd like, Mayor, it was Paulo Alcazaren, one of our speakers here, who's responsible for a lot of the planning in Iloilo City. And since I'm also from Iloilo City, I'm very proud to from there, and very thankful to Paulo for handling planning of Iloilo City.
We were not the only planners involved, although we did a lot of we did the Esplanade and the various components. We also just completed the conservation master plan for heritage buildings in the center of Iloilo, but other portions of Iloilo, they have a very good city planning and development office, and the other consultants such as Dinka Incidele and his group came in also for additional planning for the business section. And we have the cooperation. What the authorities have ensured is that every time these plans come up, there is always stakeholder engagement. So it's
Right.
very important to get everyone involved in the process. Otherwise, it won't be successful. And although it's difficult, it has to be done, and it ensures the ultimate buildability of all these plans.
Mayor Lali is on the video now. May follow-up question kaya, Mayor, perhaps on the topic.
Yes, I'd just like to ask who initiated the project? Was it the province of Iloilo or is it Iloilo City? Because I understand Iloilo City is an independent city.
Yes, it was the initiatives for improvement in Iloilo was actually all of the levels, starting from Senator Drilon, and then at the time Mayor Treñas was the congressman, and at the time the mayor was Mayor Mabilog, and they all talk the same language. The initiatives was a community decision to do the improvements. It started with the cleaning of the river. So when the river was cleaned, the informal settlers were moved. The opportunity to provide for something as interesting as the Esplanade came out. It worked hand in hand with the reintroduction of the mangroves, which is also an initiative by a civic group there. So it's unusual to have all of the levels of government, everyone in bed together like this. It's for a lot of other towns and cities, it's quite the opposite. So we're lucky to have found that there was a singular political will. And one of the things in Metro Manila, that reason why nothing can be solved, is there are 17 political wills in Metro Manila.
Right.
18 including national government. But it can be done.
Need to unmute Mayor Lani. I think she's speaking.
This has happened in the past how many years, sir? If the development started, what year and when did it? And I know it's still continuously being improved and developed. So when did this particular planning start, and since how long have you been initiating this particular project in Iloilo province?
Yes, ma'am. The initiatives to fix Iloilo started with the flood control, and then the building of the new airport. So this is over 12 years ago. The city improvement started about 10 years ago after the river was cleaned. The Esplanade started 8 years ago, and every year it's one phase. We're now in phase 9. And hopefully in the next 2 years, we'll reach the harbor, and eventually the bridge to Guimaras will be built. And so it all is part of a much bigger context for improvement of the region. So it's good that all the levels of government we're seeing. And one of the things also, especially in COVID, in Iloilo, is the fact that they have a wonderful, for not just Iloilo City, but the entire province, a wonderful hospital network. So a lot of hospitals were built, and this is one of the reasons why they have been so resilient, especially in this COVID time.
Probably we could get your contact number, sir, and probably you could share your ideas for the not only for the city of Bacoor but also for the province of Cavite, if you don't mind, sir. Thank you.
No problem. We'd like to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Lani.
Thank you.
Always an active part of our open forum. Thanks for chiming in again. We have another question from Mayor Nico Yulo from Bago City. So is it possible to get Mayor Yulo online? Hello, Mayor. Magandang hapon. How are you?
Magandang hapon. Good afternoon, and hello to all the mayors here. Hello, Bill, and hello to all the presenters.
Hello, sir.
Well, it's not really I don't know if anyone can answer this, but about 3 years ago, DBM, Department of Budget and Management, has this program, Green, and architect Paulo Alcarazan was one of the presenters then, and we are a recipient of that program. We are now on our 3rd phase. I don't know if there will be a 4th phase. I'm not sure if anyone can answer that. The architect Paolo, yes.
We have Anton
Sure.
raising his hand there.
Okay. Hi, Mayor. I just want to share the experience of Pasig. We are also actually waiting on the well, we basically submitted also requirements for the 2019 and 2020 allocations. So I think if you were able to, I think submit for 2019 and 2020, that should be fine now. Unfortunately, what I'm hearing is that it's still not sure if it will be continued further because of the budget crunch for COVID at the national level. I mean, of course, when you talk about open space, it really should be thought of as like a project to help people in the time of COVID when they need outdoor recreation that's safer.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that info.
Thank you, Mayor. Architect Paulo, you think you were going to answer that question as well?
Yes, we don't know what the next administration, whether the next administration will continue this very good program of the DBM. The ideal thing would be to embed the requirement for funding of pedestrian infrastructure and open space into each LGU's budget. It has to be that. And when you look at it, it is necessary investment. If our towns and cities had investment in this infrastructure, they would be as well off as Iloilo is today. So we have to embed it. We have to get the infrastructure going. We have to build it, and we will be ready for any disaster or whatever will come in the future. There's no
Thank
choice.
you for that, Architect Paulo. Nice to see you again.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Katarina, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, add that from a global perspective, that I think this point about ring fencing investment, whether it's transport investment or investment in open space, in municipal budgets, but also within national budgets, is really important. And around the world, we've seen that when budgetary allocations do not correspond either to the mode share of how people are traveling in cities. So in many cities around the world, 80 to 90% of the transport budget is still spent on infrastructure for private cars, even though that isn't how the majority of people travel. And we see something very similar in terms of, the public spaces that people use, green spaces that people use. So I think, starting at the national level with ring-fenced sort of spending targets and then also implementing that at the local level is absolutely essential. Otherwise, it won't happen because you always have the next crisis around the corner that eats up your budget, right? And suddenly plans that were in place are scrapped. And cities, obviously, for a lot of investments, local governments need the support of the national government and of national budgets to make these things a reality on the ground. That's a fact around the world. So I guess in terms of lobbying the national government, that's an important priority moving forward.
Okay, great perspective
Sui,
from Katarina.
If I may,
Paulo.
Sui.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there are other sources for funding. In Iloilo now, they've ran out of their funds from the Green, and even TIESA, which is under the DOT. So they are taking the initiative to use their own funds. And a lot of the funds also can come from the budgets already allocated for CCA, DRRM, community climate change adaptation, and disaster risk mitigation, because parks and open spaces and all of these alternative transport, you should be primary transport networks, are part of disaster risk mitigation and climate change adaptation.
Absolutely.
It's just
So it can
the
work.
resources are there. Resources are there. And let's stop building flyovers and elevated vehicular skyways. Everybody else in the world are tearing down their elevateds while we're still building them.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Paulo. Speaking of resources, thank you, Mayor Nico. Is there anything you'd like to follow up on that, or shall we move on to? There's one question about natural resources here. Maybe Randy can answer this. Are there plans to use natural gas for public transport, like what other Asian countries are doing? Perhaps in the context of that mix of different energies you were mentioning.
Yeah, so I think there are different types of energy solutions that you can actually work on from a transport perspective. So from gasoline, then we also have in Shell, we have liquefied natural gas. So in the transport that we actually have in various parts of the world, we have LNG trucks and buses. We also have hydrogen as well. So that's a new mix too. So that's very common in the US and then in Europe. So you actually have the very huge truck using hydrogen. So EV is very, very important. So this is something wherein We're already present in majority of the countries. So even in Singapore, we just launched our Shell recharge proposition because there's an EV solution. So yeah, so there are various mix. So whether it's gas, hydrogen, like even in gasoline and diesel, wherein we added biofuels, which we're already having here in the Philippines, but there are really different energy choices that we make. So it's just really a matter of having that conversation within, as what I mentioned a while ago, within the government, within the partners, within the OEMs, in terms of what will be relevant here in the Philippines. But as I've seen in other parts of the world, it has really become an option. So that's really an effort to see a lot of this type of transport shifting towards cleaner energy solution. And in Shell, we're as you know, so that's probably part of the world that we are in. That's really some of the spaces that we're really shifting towards as well.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a question about what do you think of maybe for the locals, no? What do you think about the bus system that's being implemented on EDSA? About maybe I can ask Paulo and Anton here as it relates to transportation and the city plan, no, around the bus transport that's being put together in EDSA.
Yes,
So are
of course.
we referring to the BRT, the one in the center?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
it's one of the unanswered questions in our list.
Yes, before the lockdown, the ADB and I believe the World Bank, there were a lot of initiatives with DOTR. I'm not privy to what happened after the lockdown. The BRT systems, the studies were already done, and there was also an NMT component for connectivity with the systems. It's all in place. It was just a matter of waiting for funding. In fact, our Greenways project with DOTR, ADB funded the design consultancy, and we ended up waiting for DOTR to release the very small amount of 200-something million pesos for the system, but it got stuck because it was, I believe, that's my thinking, it was too small an amount, and they were looking at the billion-peso projects. A lot of our of this infrastructure is really quite affordable, but because they're not billion-peso big box projects, they seem to be relegated to a second priority. But the BRT studies have already been done. The initiative of MMDA lacks some urban design inputs because the connectivity from the side of the road to the center, where you have the system, as well as the in effect ground level terminals you need for them, they have to be put in, and this is a lot of coordination with the LGUs as well as the DPWH. There's still a lot of work to be done, but it can be done.
Anton,
Should.
your thoughts on that?
Okay. I think it's a little well, okay, I think maybe I can share some of my thoughts. It's mildly awkward for me to say maybe some things about it just because it's a project in of course it's a project outside our jurisdiction.
Yes.
I think though of course prioritizing public transport is a good thing. I think BRT all over the world is actually quite an interesting phenomenon. It started, of course, when countries were, I think it's commonly looked at as a way for people to transport large amounts of people without the use of a subway. Although what we see now is that in many countries, even the ones with highly developed subway systems, that BRT still plays a role, even in countries that are wealthier and can afford things like rail systems. So I think it's a good initiative. It's a good work in progress, but I think we're still on the way to implementing all of the elements of true BRT system as the I think as some of the studies recommended. So we're looking forward, of course, to the continued improvement.
Thank you, Anton.
Yeah, Sui, if I may add, I think it's conceptually good. We know the system works in other countries, in other cities. I think where we fall short is implementation. I don't think all the stations are built. That's number one. Number two, our buses, the entrances and exits are on the right side of the bus, and this requires exits and entries on the left side of the bus. So we we've got the concept, but I think, as Anton said, implementation, I think we've got a long way to go.
Correct.
So if you look at it on EDSA, I think it seems to me it's a wasted lane right now.
Anton, you're raising your hand before we conclude this one.
Sure. I just want to attack onto what Bill said. I think right now it's commonly seen as kind of silly that the entrance and exit is on the other side of where the doors are. However, I think that's only one way of looking at the problem. I think what it shows is an unwillingness to create a platform on the other side by taking another lane to allow people to board where the doors of our buses currently are. So I think really what the system looks like now is just a reflection of how we chose to solve the problem, and also maybe shows the I think current limits of imagination and implementation. And maybe I should stop there.
Okay. Good. Yes, I think we should stop there.
Paulo is smiling.
The lobbies, people with other agenda, never mind, not this forum.
I bet it will be in one of a photo of that will be in one of Paulo's next PowerPoint decks for sure. Okay.
No, my deck this afternoon was very tame.
Okay, I've seen a version of that before. Thank you again for that. We're at the hour. I'd like to make a run through of the people in the panel now, just one or two points before we close our webinar, and then of course I'll go on to close the webinar. Let's start, of course, our lady guest first, Katarina. Just a few points on your experience today with our Filipino colleagues here in the same space of cities and mobility. Please, on to you.
Thank you so much. Well, I mean, just to say, it's been a huge pleasure to be here and a great honor to be able to present as an international sort of perspective. I've learned a lot about the experiences of the Philippines, and have to say that I haven't felt this hopeful in quite a long time, because, COVID has been hanging over our heads now for quite a while. And if you work in urban mobility, and if you're particularly interested in the sort of sustainability and equity implications of mass public transport, as I am, it can be a really disheartening moment. But overall, I think I'm feeling really optimistic about the work that's happening in the Philippines. And I guess would just like to say that, it's fantastic to think about modernizing and looking to the future and all of these new technologies. But we can't forget that for decades in our cities, where the government did step in, people on the ground have innovated to try and solve problems, and we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And by looking at the systems that we currently have, for example, in the form of jeepneys, they may be imperfect, they may have their problems, but I think bringing them along in this mobility revolution is really important, rather than leaving them behind. So that's what I'd like to leave with.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katarina. Let's go in the sequence of how people presented. Let's get Anton and Paulo, and then Randy. Anton?
Sure. It's been a great experience, and I think this discussion was really educational for me as well. I think maybe to dovetail on what Katarina said, one of the real key points that we have to think about mobility is really not just sustainability, but especially equity. And I think maybe that's one aspect that we should always keep in mind when doing planning for better mobility. We see it in designing streets for kids, in designing for accessibility of people with disabilities. If you are able to design streets to be used by everybody, it's better for it's really better for everyone involved. So you make a street safer for kids, it gets better for cyclists, it gets better for car drivers. So I think that's one thing we have to keep in mind when thinking about mobility policy. You've got to make sure nobody is left behind.
Thank you, Anton. Well said. Paulo, your one or two things? Your one thing. Sige, your one thing.
One thing. Well, mobility is what I want now. I have cabin fever. I want to go out and be mobile again and meet people and have fun. But also another thing is that I've lost over 35 pounds, and I can now cycle and walk to work. So I'll do that. I think I can exist now without my car. So my office is only 15 minutes walk from where I live, and I can do that now, having lost all this weight.
You can walk now.
I'm healthy. Yes.
Bravo. Good. I love that one thing. Randy, one thing?
Probably for me is I wanted to just really thank everyone for inviting me. I learned a lot, but from the one thing perspective is we actually learn a lot, and we need to work together on this mobility transition. And this is not just about, again, not just the government not doing this, but it's really about everyone. So even here working for Shell, We have done this a lot of giving a lot of solutions in different countries like Singapore. We're doing this in Beijing, even in London, or even in Paris. So we're really shaping up a lot of these mobility options, and we're actually here in as well as a private company to together to really work on this mobility transition towards a better cities that we will have here in the Philippines. So really excited. Excited.
Great. Yeah, yes, we should all work towards one goal. Great.
Yes.
Bill, how about you?
Yeah, thanks. You know, I when I look at our traffic situation and transport situation, it can be quite discouraging. But I think listening to the points of view here, I'm much more encouraged, and I'm much more optimistic because I see great design imagination, both in the private and the public sector. And I think it's hopefully people get the appreciation. It's a combination of design, and it's a combination of policy, and of course implementation, and that it happens at both the national and the local level. So I'm really encouraged and optimistic now that I see this all coming together. I think there are a lot of challenges ahead of us, but I think this also could be quite a lot of fun solving it. And I always have looked at this COVID situation as kind of the golden opportunity to transform, but transform something permanently, not some short-term solution that we all go back and do business as usual. I really think it's a great time to completely change and do something permanent and something good and for good.
Yeah.
So thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody. I mean, you've been such a great panel, Katarina and Anton, Paolo, and Randy. I think we all learned a lot today.
Thank you. Great. And my one thing is to thank the 460 plus people who attended our webinar on Zoom. Plus, I think there must have been about 60 plus or 70 people on Facebook Live. No? There were some problems getting that off the ground, but thank you for the more than 500 people who have tuned in to this webinar. I have some final notes to say. I invite everyone to please answer the feedback form that will appear as you exit this webinar. For those in Facebook, there's a QR code that you can click. You take a picture of the QR code and it takes you through to the feedback form. Your response will really help improve the Liveable Cities Lab series, and you can get also a certificate of participation by answering the corresponding question in the survey in case you need that certification. The copies of this presentation will be sent to you by email, and as I said before, the recordings will be sent to you as well. Well, we look forward to seeing you again at the next Liveable Cities Lab. That will be on Wednesday, October 21, and the topic will be urban planning and resilience. Of course, we invite you to tune in, like, and follow us on social media. I think they'll show the social media channels and handles that we have. Thank you, Bill, for inviting me to be part of this webinar, to be the host and moderator. Again, my name is Sui Suarez, and your Liveable Cities moderator for today. And I thank you, and I wish you that you all stay well and safe and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, people. Thank you very much.
A better future is built by the brave, envisioned by brilliant minds, born from the passions of thousands strong. One that isn't without risk, but protected from it. Safe from all the worries and secure for what's to come. Because a better future with the greatest empires, the strongest communities, and the happiest families will always be worth having. That's why the bold and the fearless understand that recreating something better takes courage and strength. So together, let's start shaping a better future today. Recreate a braver tomorrow.